at you all. You look lovely. President McBride, members of the Board of Trustees, members of the class of 23, faculty, staff, family, friends, parents. How does it go? Bagginses, Bulgers, Hard Brettles, Proudfoots. There we go. Thank you, nerds. Proud feet. Thank you for giving me the honor of speaking with you today. And before I say anything else, can I also just have a shout out for the president's staff who made all of this happen. It is an incredible amount of work, and it's a great team, and I'm very grateful to them as well. I can't tell you how great it is to be here on the stage. At Commencement at the New School, an institution I have loved and admired since my college roommate freshman year dropped out of Wesleyan and enrolled at the New School instead. Well, I don't know if he actually graduated from the New School, but he did transfer. That's the important part. One of the last things he said to me before I moved to New York was, "Boylan, don't be afraid of change. It's good." All I could think now is, dude, be careful what you wish for. We should probably talk about the idea of change, which is on the minds of all of you graduates and soon-to-be graduates who, at this moment, move from one part of your lives to the next. But also, I'm thinking about the parents and family up there who find your lives changing in profound ways on this day as well. As a transgender American, I can tell you a lot about what it means to go from one part of your life to the next. Although in my own life, the biggest change was not going from male to female, but going from a person who had a secret to a person without one. A person burdened by a private sense of shame. Oh, thank you. And I went from a person who had a private sense of shame to a person who was able to live her life out loud with pride. Yeah, hello. Look, gender isn't the only thing that's changed in my life. An even more profound change, in fact, happened a dozen years ago when I lost my hearing. And I went from a person who had really never given serious thought to what it might be like to move through the world as a disabled person to someone who, well, I can tell you, is someone who now thinks about it all the time. I still remember the morning I called my wife after getting my final diagnosis, the one in which my doctor told me my hearing was mostly gone after a single night standing a little too close to a fire alarm when it went off. This is my wife, Dee, to whom I have now been married 35 years. 12 as husband and wife, and 23 as wife and wife. That's what I'm talking about. So I told her my news, and then I started sobbing into the phone right there. One of those crazy people on the streets of New York crying into their phone. I said, and I really said this, "I'm so sorry you have to be married to somebody like me." She said, "Jenny, I stayed with you through the gender thing. You really think I'd divorce you because you have hearing aids?" It was just a beautiful morning in New York City. All around me were the sounds of chirping birds, shouting children, honking taxis. I said, "What?" Is there an ASL signer here? I don't see you, but if you're out there somewhere, I want to thank you. And if you're not out there, next year, Mr. President, let's get one. Because that's the work that helps people like me feel included. I also remember the night almost 20 years before I lost my hearing when I told my mom that I was transgender. I was pretty sure Mom, 85 years old, Republican, conservative, and an evangelical Christian, wasn't going to view my coming out as an occasion for celebration. It's pretty scary, actually. But the time had come to spill the beans. So, Sunday night, I poured her a very hearty gin and tonic, and then I said, Mom, there's something I need to tell you. So that's when I told her I was trans, that I'd known I was supposed to be female since I was a child, but that I was afraid of telling her the truth all these years because I was afraid of disappointing her. I was afraid she wouldn't love me anymore. And right about there is the moment I started crying and found it impossible to go on, which is when my tiny 85-year-old conservative, Republican, evangelical Christian mother got up out of her chair and sat down next to me and put her arms around me and said, I would never turn my back on my child. I have always loved you. I have always loved you. And I always will love you, no matter who you are. I said to her, okay, Mom, but seriously, what will happen when everyone finds out I'm your daughter now? Won't that be an embarrassment? A scandal? She said, well, quite frankly, yes. But I will adjust. And then she quoted 1 Corinthians. She said, these three abide: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. She held me in her arms and she wiped away the tears and she said, love will prevail. Love will prevail. Thanks, Mom, wherever you are. So in my own life, that's mostly been true. Love has prevailed, although there have been times when other things have prevailed too. Ignorance, violence, loss. There are a lot of reasons why the forces of darkness seem to be in ascendance these days. Economic and racial injustice, the failure of some of our schools, the upheavals and inequities hardwired into some aspects of capitalism itself. But really, at the heart of a lot of trouble is a simple inability to accept change, a refusal to accept that most things don't last forever. And in many cases, they shouldn't last forever. It is hard to let go of the way things have been. But when we face injustice, we have to prevail. And make no mistake, to greet the world with love doesn't mean that you sit around with a dopey smile on your face while the world burns around you. For love to prevail, it is necessary to greet the world with fierceness, to push back against injustice with both relentlessness and joy, wisdom and ferocity. Those who would turn back the clock to a time when women were denied the right to control our own bodies, to a time when LGBTQ people had to live in the shadows, to a time when people of color could be denied the right to vote, these people need to understand that they have a fight on their hands. They have a fight on their hands. But those of us engaged in this work are motivated not by fear, but hope. Not by intolerance, but justice. Not by hate, but love. Members of the class of 23, I said earlier that today is a day of change for you, but it's also a day of change for your parents and for those who have served as parents for you. If you see them later today, shedding tears, forgive them. And consider that they may not only be shedding tears for you. Today is a day when they might well find themselves like Kurt Vonnegut's Billy Pilgrim, come unstuck in time. They will be watching you both standing there and crossing the stage, but they will also maybe be remembering when they were the ones graduating from college, or who knows, perhaps a time even more distant than that. My daughter graduated from Vassar a few years ago, and on that day, even as she took her degree in hand, it was impossible for me not to remember standing in an OR 22 years earlier as a baby's cry filled the room, my wife, Didi, light radiating from her face, looked up and said, "That's amazing." Well, it is amazing. The passage of time, an occasion for joy and celebration, and sure, a few tears as well, maybe, at how swiftly our days pass by. But as Gandalf said, I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are an evil. President McBride, trustees, faculty, staff, I thank you for the great honor you've bestowed upon me, members of the class of 23. We cannot wait to see what and who you change into next. We wish you joy and Godspeed in all the adventures that now begin. May love in your lives always prevail. Thanks, everybody.